My name is Mark Keem. I'm a member of the House of Delegates, and I want to welcome you to the official press conference that will announce the launch of the Virginia Asian American Pacific Islander Caucus. And the reason why we are gathering today is not only to announce this historic decision by our Speaker and our General Assembly, but also to commemorate something that I wish we were not commemorating, which is the fact that over the last year, we know a lot of Americans have suffered. COVID has affected every single American in so many different ways. So many of us have lost friends and relatives to the disastrous COVID pandemic. Others have lost their economic opportunities. But for some people in America, Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, they were taunted, attacked, assaulted, and some were even murdered during this year. A lot of it risen by anti-Asian bigotry and prejudice that's been around for 200 years or more. And so today is a national day of action to stop Asian hate. And on this day in Virginia, we're taking action as well. The action we're taking is the formation of an Asian American Pacific Islander caucus as part of the legislature. To start off this morning, I'd like to recognize the Speaker of the House, Eileen Phillicorn, who made this possible today. So I want to first thank the Speaker for joining us, and let me turn this over to her.
Thank you so much, Delegate Keem, and good morning, everyone. Thank you all for joining us this morning. First and foremost, I want to thank Delegates Converse-Fowler, Delegate Keem, Delegate Subramaniam, Delegate Tran, and Senator Hashmi for their leadership in making the creation of this caucus a reality. The events of the past weeks really have been heartbreaking. And I think it's also serves as a stark reminder that the issues of bigotry and racism are far from being solved. The pain many are feeling right now at this exact moment are real, and the pain of loss of life, but also the pain, loss of sense of safety and belonging. And the formation of this caucus should send a loud and clear message that AAPI Virginians belong in the Commonwealth. Their elected leadership at the highest levels of the Commonwealth of Virginia stand with them side by side. And that is why we're here today. This caucus will ensure that at every step of the way, AAPI Virginians will have their voices heard in the policy-making process. But policy alone obviously will not end this violence or stop the prejudice or stop the discrimination that so many Virginians face in this moment. It'll require all of us, every single one, every single Virginian, to forcefully denounce the harmful stereotypes, the scapegoating, and ultimately, which has caused so many of these attacks. So today is another small mark of progress in that direction. So thank you all so much for being here today. Thank you again to Delegates Converse-Fowler, Delegate Keem, Delegate Subramaniam, Delegate Tran, and Senator Hashmi for your leadership in making the creation of this caucus a reality. I will now pass the virtual mic over to the next speaker.
Well, thank you so much, Speaker Phillicorn, for your support for this important endeavor. And good morning. I'm Ghazala Hashmi, and I have the honor of representing Senate District 10, which includes large parts of the city of Richmond and Chesterfield County, as well as all of Powhatan County. I was elected to office in 2019, and my background is South Asian. I was born in India, and I immigrated to the United States when I was 4.5 years old in 1969. I'm happy to share also that although they couldn't join us this morning, Senate Majority Leader Dick Saslaw and Senate Democratic Caucus Chair Mamie Locke have expressed their full support for this new AAPI caucus. Those of us who are the founding members of the AAPI caucus have for several months discussed its need in the Commonwealth. And this past year in particular has seen the escalation of violence, both in targeted attacks of hate and abusive rhetoric against the AAPI communities in the United States. The past administration and the White House frequently sought to demean and dehumanize the AAPI and took little action in response to growing attacks against vulnerable elderly Asian Americans, against Asian American women, or against the bullying of AAPI children in school. The violence culminated tragically on March 16th in the mass murder of 8 people in Atlanta, 6 of whom were Asian American women. But this history of racism, of xenophobia and open bigotry isn't new. The Page Act of 1875, the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, the internment of Japanese Americans during World War II are prominent examples of how within our collective history, the AAPI continue to be regarded as outsiders or as foreigners within their own country. So today, as has been mentioned, today, March 26th, is the National Stop Asian Hate Day of Action. And as we announce our new caucus, we join our voices with the voices of numerous Virginians and other Americans to call for an end to hate crimes and violence against the AAPI, and also to shine a spotlight on the bigotry, the xenophobia, the demeaning rhetoric that is often the ground on which violence against the AAPI is nurtured. And now I'd like to pass the mic on to our delegate, Converse Fowler.
Thank you so much, Senator Hashmi. Thank you all for being here. My name is Kelly Converse Fowler. I was elected to the Virginia House of Delegates in 2017, and I represent the 21st District in Virginia Beach and Chesapeake. The fastest growing population in America is the Asian American Pacific Islander community. There are over 30 different countries represented and over 100 languages spoken within the AAPI community. In the US, 20% of all AAPIs are Filipino. Here in Virginia Beach, where I grew up, we have the highest concentration of Filipino Americans in the state. I am proud to live in and represent a district that is filled with diverse faces and voices. Asian American Pacific Islanders have been a huge part of the workforce in our country. From the laying of the Transcontinental Railroad to the migrant workers picking lettuce in Watsonville, California, like my grandmother did years ago after the horrible riots and violence that occurred there in 1930. She later met my grandfather, who immigrated here from the Philippines and served this country in the US Navy to earn his citizenship. The AAPI community has a long history of being the model minority, known for enduring inequity, racism, and xenophobia. Today, the formation of the AAPI Caucus symbolizes a shift in the Virginia AAPI community. We will not be silent any longer. We will advocate for AAPI Virginians and issues that affect us. We will speak out about injustice towards our AAPI community. Complacency and silence lead to hate. I am honored to be here today and speaking out with my fellow AAPI colleagues on this day. Today is a day of action to stop AAPI hate. We are using our voices to speak out with one voice. We call on our allies to stand with us. Do not be silent. Do not be complacent. We will no longer be the model minority. We will no longer be the scapegoat. Thank you so much for listening, and I will pass the mic off to the next speaker.
Good morning. Good morning. I am Kathy Tran. I was elected in 2017 to I'm sorry, an emotional morning this morning for me. I actually didn't realize how much I needed this and how powerful it is that we are coming together. I was elected in 2017 to represent the 42nd District in Southeast and Southern Fairfax County in the Virginia House of Delegates. My family came to the United States when I was almost 2 years old as boat refugees from Vietnam, because for my parents, this country embodies hope, opportunity, and freedom. The disturbing and steep rise in violence, bigotry, and racism against Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, the rise in vandalism against Asian American businesses, and the targeted killing of 6 Asian American women in Georgia last week show us that we must continue to fight for inclusion and justice for everyone. Our work in the Virginia AAPI Caucus stands on the shoulders of many who have come before us. Asian American and Pacific Islander community leaders and organizations have worked for generations to serve AAPI communities in Virginia and to move Virginia forward. We are committed to drawing upon the insights and expertise of our community leaders, and we will seek input from those working daily in service to AAPI Virginians, the Virginia Asian Advisory Board, and the Office of New Americans Advisory Board. Our movement to lift up the voices of Virginia's AAPI community is part of a larger movement for racial and economic justice. We rise only when all of us rise. And we are deeply grateful that the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus, members of the Virginia Latino Caucus, and so many of our state and House caucus mates stand in solidarity with us to stop AAPI hate. We are committed to coalition building and being allies to achieve our common goals of a more just and equitable future for Virginians. And I turn the mic over to Delegate Subramaniam.
Thank you, Delegate Tran, and thank you all for being here. I'm Delegate Suhas Subramaniam. I represent the 87th District, which includes Loudoun and Prince William counties, as well as Dulles Airport. And like many Asian Americans, Dulles Airport was the port of entry for my family when they immigrated from India in the late 1970s to build a better life. And I want to echo the sentiments of others regarding the importance of this caucus amidst a rising tide of hate throughout this country. And I want to add that as we create the agenda for this caucus, we want to hear from you, Virginians. That's why we will be launching a listening tour very soon in April that includes planned regional listening sessions throughout Virginia, including Central Virginia, Northern Virginia, and the Hampton Roads Tidewater area. These sessions will help us gauge the issues of concerns in these communities. We plan to incorporate the feedback we receive from these listening sessions into the caucus's policy agenda, which we hope to release in May, which coincides with the AAPI Heritage Month. And we will also look into pursuing legislation in 2022 and beyond. So thank you so much for being a part of this, and we really appreciate your support. And I'll hand it over now to Delegate Keene.
Thank you, Suhas, and to all of our colleagues who just joined us. First, let me acknowledge the fact that we have many of our colleagues in the House and the Senate joining us this morning. It is so good to see all of you. Thank you for standing with us, joining us on this special day. But more importantly, thank you for what you've already been doing, because the work that you're doing is what we're trying to do is to continue that progressive change that we need. Just to clarify, this caucus is literally being formed as we speak, and we don't have officers yet. We don't have all of the structures of an organization yet. What we have is a strong motivation to get things done. And so all of you who've joined us today, you will be a part of this in some way or another. We're going to make sure that every voice is heard as we move this caucus forward. We're going to take a little time over the next few weeks to organize ourselves, have some listening sessions, check in with all of our colleagues, especially those members of the Black Caucus and the Latino Caucus and others who've been working in the field for so long. We want to learn from you and to really become a mentee as well as a partner with you. And so in that spirit, today, the 4 or 5 members that you heard are what we're just informally calling our founding members. These are members whose origins and ethnicity are from Asia Pacific Islands. And we wanted to just show the fact that we have come so far in Virginia. When I was elected 12 years ago, I had the honor of joining this august body. But what I realized is in the 400-year history that I joined at the time in 2010, I was the first person who was born in Asia, who's not a child of a military service member or anything like that, an Asian who was born in Asia, who immigrated to this country as a young 14-year-old immigrant, and then eventually became an American by naturalization. And then I ran for office and won. And so in 2010, when I had the privilege of being sworn in, I realized how quickly our Commonwealth was changing. Little could I have anticipated, 12 years later, you just saw the breadth and the amazing depth of our diversity. We have people from various different backgrounds, ethnicities, races, as religions, as well as looking around our screens here, we have people from the genders and sexual orientation and identity, and in so many different ways that we all work together. We want to bring our all full diversity. But in that spirit, it's not enough for us to just be represented. It's not enough for us to just be seen. It is critical that we pass our views and our viewpoints into the law so that our Commonwealth's laws and policies reflect that diversity, that everybody in Virginia feels that their voice is heard when the laws are passed and the language in the Code of Virginia and the regulatory and the administrative rules reflect their values. And that is the purpose of this caucus. So as we move forward in the next few months, leading up to the 2022 legislative session and beyond, our goal is to develop a set of robust policy positions. Clearly, some of these are going to be very familiar to all of us because we all stand for these issues. The idea of equal justice, inequality, and equity in everything we do, making sure that the government services are always provided with language as well as cultural competency so that every Virginian of every background can feel that their government is for them and their taxpayer funding is used the right way. The idea that when somebody is victimized, especially what we've seen with the AAPI community over the last year, but all of us who are victimized, whether it's what we've seen with the tragic situations with no-knock warrants or with police being extremely assertive in their efforts to try to restrain people and leading in the death and unfortunate passing of so many of our African-American brothers and sisters. We want to make sure that the criminal justice system works for all of us. And what that means for the AAPI community is that they need to recognize when a crime or an assault or some incident happens where the origin may be of racial bigotry, it may be of bias, it may be a perception that that person doesn't belong here as a foreigner. We want to make sure that that's captured as part of law enforcement authority so that they understand the depth of hate that's out there for people that look like me. It also means that as our government does business with other businesses, small businesses, contracts and such, that we ensure that all the voices that have the economic opportunities in America and in Virginia in particular have a chance to bid for those jobs. And so we have contracting opportunities. And finally, we want to make sure that we develop further leaders, people, some of us who have the honor of serving in public office, we have 6 or 7 now that are of Asian origin. But there are clearly way more people out there that can be serving at every level of government. So we want to encourage that they step up, we identify them, we nurture them, we encourage them, we mentor them, and we provide them with the resources so that they can really become the owners of this Commonwealth, just like you and I are trying to do as well. So these are some of the broad principles that we stand for. We're going to turn this into law once we hear from our community over the next few months. So with that, I'd like to conclude the speaking portion and then turn this over to our amazing House and Senate communication staffs to moderate the next portion where we will hear from reporters. I know we have a number of reporters online, so we can just turn it over to them. And then at the end, we will close out with, I think Senator Hashmi will close us out.